Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, have we got another great show. I am just telling you what, folks, this show is going to be for you. And how do I know that the show is going to be for you? Because here's the deal. We all deal with some things. And you know what the things that we deal with is? We deal with change. We deal with fear. Oh, you say, oh, Jay. Don't deal with fear. I never deal with fear. I am fearless. I don't have fear. I've never had fear. Let me ask you a question. All right? Because we need to talk to you. We need to talk. All right. The fact of the matter is, have you ever heard of FOMO? Yeah, fear of missing out. Do you ever feel like you're missing out? And you don't want to miss out? That's fear. Right? It is. Right? Do you ever sometimes like jump from relationship to relationship? Chances are it's fear. Right? There's a lot of ways that fear shows up, and we don't even realize that it has. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, my friend Tom Scarda has written this book, The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. Oh yeah, how to manage change, embrace fear, and live a life fulfilled. It's right here. And I'm gonna tell you something. The book is fantastic. You're gonna love him. You're going to love this book because we're going to dig into it. But before we do that, let's do what we do every week, right? And that's this, right? You know, folks, we are four-part people. We are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual people. We are. And, you know, the thing that we learned from talking to all the, you know, special operations forces, you know, Navy SEALs, you know, Green Berets, Delta Force, generals that we've had on the show, Marines, you know what they tell you? You know what? You're four-part people. And you have to be in constant training every single day in those four areas of your life if you expect to grow. Because here's the truth. If you are not growing, you're dying. That's the truth. And we need to be doing things every day in the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, right? And even in the relational, in order for us to continue growing. So we're going to walk you through on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being my training is just, and 10, my training is outstanding. How would you rate yourself physically? Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, like eating right, getting enough exercise, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep. If you were to average all that stuff out on a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being average, where would you be? All right? That's your first number. Second number, mentally, right? Oh, Tom's going to talk about your mental game, right? Because our mental game is so important. Our mental training is so important. What we think and how we think about things is so incredibly important, right? But we need to be absorbing the learning, and we need to be aware of our past crud that's holding us back so that we can release that. Tom's going to talk about. So on a scale of 1 to 10, being an active learner, right? What grade would you give yourself on that scale, 1 to 10, 5 being average? Right? That's 2 numbers. Third number is the emotional number. And what do I mean emotionally? Well, it's 2 categories, really. One is how well can you control your emotions under stress and pressure? You know, like when you're tired, exhausted, things are coming at you. How well you be to control your emotions? Because you can't control them. You have that choice. And then secondly, how well are you able to truly understand and tap into the emotions of others? Because here's the thing, right? That's called empathy, right? When we can understand, when we can truly listen and understand to others' emotions, right? You know, that's powerful because that's listening. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing those 2 things? Right now you got 3 numbers. Next comes the spiritual, and people get kind of weirded out about the spiritual. They think, oh, Jay, I'm not real spiritual. I'm not real spiritual. You know, let me tell you something. When things go south, you run to something, right? Matter of fact, if you remove the physical, the mental, and the emotional, you know what you have left? The spiritual. You believe in something. You believe that something, you have faith in something. And you say, I don't believe in faith, and you're wrong, because if you have plans for tomorrow that have not happened, that means you believe that they will. And you know what? That's faith. We all have faith in something. Even if we think we are our own God, right? I believe in me. Okay. Could be God. It could be you. It could be nature. It could be. The other thing is, what gives you peace? What gives you a sense of centeredness in the midst of chaos? Right? And then you got to ask yourself a question. How's it working? Do you need to change it? What do you need to change up? Maybe it's meditation. I don't know. But what would you give yourself on that training, that area of your life on skill? You have 4 areas, right? You got 4 numbers now. Those 2 numbers like the legs of a chair. And you know what? Those legs of the chair are, if they're too low, you can't eat at a table. And if they're uneven, it makes our posture bad in our life, right? Speaking of someone who's got his 4 legs, right height, all even. His name is Tom Scarda. He is a certified franchise expert, author of 3 books, and contributes to numerous investment magazines. I've even seen him on Entrepreneur, and hosts the Franchise Academy podcast. Tom has owned and operated 5 businesses, both franchised and non-franchised. Tom was the #1 franchisee of the year in one concept and failed miserably in another concept. The lessons he learned from failure is what makes him such an expert. Named among the top 50 business leaders on Long Island, since 2005, he has helped more than 1,500 people figure out if franchising is right for them. Tom lives happily with his actor wife, Gina, of more than 30 years, and I understand they have a new dog, Dora. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome to a new direction for the first time, Tom Scarda. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Jay, this is awesome. It's an honor. I can't even tell you.
Well, awesome. I'm so glad to have you on. First of all, the book, The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty, really rings true for me. I believe in everything that you're saying. We may have some different jargon in how we say it, but I do believe in everything that you're saying. And here's the thing for people when it comes to and the secondary title is so powerful, how to embrace change, embrace fear, and live a fulfilled life. Here's the thing, and you start off in the introduction and you say this, and I think if everybody's listening, and I don't care whether you're listening in so many of the other 90 countries outside the United States, listen, the stock markets tumble much faster than they climb. People stay in relationships that are unfulfilling or even dangerous. Workers work labor in jobs, labor in jobs they hate. Prescriptions for controlling the symptoms of depression have skyrocketed. What gives? And you say in each of these examples, the driving force is fear. And then you go on, you ask a question, when the phone rings at an unexpected hour, do you automatically think it's bad news? We really don't. That's just in the introduction, folks. That's just the introduction. I haven't even got to chapter 1. That's just the opening of introduction, right? Does that catch your mind? Does that get you? Because it got me, because it's all true, right, Tom? So when we start talking about these things and we start piling it all together, there's a lot of fear out there.
Oh, yeah. It really is. It's built into our DNA from the time we are born. It's all about be careful, don't take risks. And it's just really your parents, I mean, I did it with my own children. You're so fearful something's going to happen. And it's so much, it's interesting when you analyze it and peel it back. You're not afraid of like an incident, but you're afraid about how you're going to react if something was to happen. That's where it stems from. So it's interesting to kind of think about it that way.
You talk about in chapter 1, and it's entitled How the Mind Really Works. And as my master's doctoral work is in psychology, and as a psychological professional, I'm always interested in how people view the mind and what they think. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I think you nailed this one pretty well, because I would add that there's 3 distinct parts, but we'll go with 2, which I think is fine. The conscious and the subconscious. And then I would say the third part's the non-conscious. And when I say, and that's something in psychology, the non-conscious is like breathing, your blood temperature regulation. We're not conscious of that. So that would be the third area. But the conscious and the non-conscious is where we want to talk about. And these 2 areas of the mind, right? And a lot of people don't want to talk about the subconscious mind very much, but it is really, really important, because you alluded to it here, that the subconscious mind is that part of us that has been influenced in a variety of different ways since our childhood. And that causes us a number of problems, doesn't it?
It sure does. And sometimes there are some folks out there who you may know have written extensively on the fact that we in the womb are actually affected by outside forces that our parents are experiencing when we're not even born. And then other people go all the way back to, if it's your mom is a little girl, she has the eggs eventually that will be her children. And if she's in a negative circumstance, that's affecting her body,
Mm,
her mind, hence the eggs that she's carrying in her body,
wow.
which then comes out on you when you're, it's insane that we're born kind of fighting fear before we even know anything else.
Mm. That's an interesting concept. The truth of the matter is, and it's a very Jungian concept. Jungian, I should, sorry for those people who want to correct me about Jung, but it's a very Jungian concept about how we, that our parents or grandparents, that we maybe carry some of that, because we certainly carry other DNA products. Why would we not carry some of the mental, emotional uh, products, right? Outside the physical that come to our well-being.
Right.
You say there are two keys that define these characteristics. First, what they believe to be true became the reality. But second, and equally more important, the actions that took place support their belief. So talk about how how our characteristics are defined by what we believe is true, and then by the actions that we've taken as a result of that, or maybe as in combination.
Well, for me, I'll talk from a personal perspective. Growing up, I think we all think our parents are God, and
Mm.
so what they say is gospel. And if they tell you that you should not be a musician because you can't make any money, there's very, very few people who will be successful. You believe that to be gospel, and then you become a subway conductor instead, which is my story. And um, I really, I should be a rock star, but I gave that up in order to actually move people in the New York City subway system. But so I really feel that, so we're brought up with that. Our parents are telling us all that information when we're younger than 6 years old, and then we become you know self-fulfilling prophecies because we live out our life with that fear structure, and we end up where we are, and then we hit 40 and we say, what are we doing? And I hate my life and I can't make a move because I have to pay the bills, so instead I'll have a shot of whiskey after dinner, or you know and then that becomes two shots of whiskey, or that becomes a line of cocaine, and then we end up as really hurt individuals. And I believe it all stems from all the way back to childhood.
I agree with you. You say in this book, nothing changes or will change us until we examine our beliefs. And
Hmm.
it doesn't matter if it's about money or whatever, I can't do this or whatever this is. But whatever it is, we have to kind of really examine this belief process.
Yeah.
Talk us through that, because I think that's a real important key as we, choose uncertainty or we embrace fear, is examining that belief process.
Yeah, I'm riding in the car with my dad. He passed in 2017. Great guy, but he was brought up with the fear of parents that grew up in the Great Depression. So he had all that going on. And he was a New York City police officer. So we would be driving down the street and I would see, like, a Jaguar or whatever, a Corvette, and I would say, "Oh, Dad, check out that car." And he would say, "Yeah, probably a drug dealer."
Mm.
And then I remember one day, specifically, I don't know, I was probably about 10 years old, and we were buying a new car. It was a used car, but it was new to us, and it was a 1974 Chevy Impala, which ended up becoming my first car. And so anyway, back then in the day, you would go to the bank and you would get cash, literally, and go buy a car, in that kind of used car scenario. So I remember him coming into my room and giving me an envelope with $5,000, and he said, "Here, I want you to hold this money because you may never hold this kind of money in your life ever again."
Mm.
And
Mm.
so in that moment, I was like, I remember very specifically saying to myself, like, "Why would you say that?
Right.
I can do anything." Because a minute ago you were telling me I could do anything I want in my life,
Right.
and then, oh, you can't. and
Right.
and that always stuck with me. And then as I grew, I ended up becoming a New York City subway conductor, and then I got into franchising, and I realized that you could make your own way. You could make your own reality. You are not stuck. This is not a caste system, especially the way we live in capitalist societies like the United States. You can do anything you want to do,
Right.
but you have to change your beliefs. So, I always say to folks, I just said this to somebody the other day, the difference between the CEO in the top corner office and the janitor is what they believe in their head. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Your stories remind me, as I was reading this book, I was thinking about a specific incident in my life where we're driving down the car, and it's almost kind of like your parents don't realize that they're cursing you, cursing your future, right? They're putting a hex or a curse on your future.
Oh my
But
God.
I remember in the back of my dad's station wagon, I don't know how old I was, maybe 9, 10 years old. And my dad said, nothing good happens to the Izzos, right? We always get the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking the same thing you thought, right? It was, why would you even say that?
Right.
Right. And I know there was this, as I was reading this and that story came back up in my mind, and I was like going, no, we can, and this is the point of your book, is that we can change this. We've got to think differently, which leads us into chapter 2, which is entitled The Thought Process. And, the brain and the computer have a lot of similarities, that's for sure. And information is input and stored. And then, but you say one thing in the very next section, you said, taking a left when everyone else is going right is painful. Taking a chance to go outside of your comfort zone is challenging, but therein lies the magic of human experience, and all growth lays beyond our comfort zone. So if the first step is kind of examining those beliefs, is part of this forcing ourselves to do something that maybe goes against the grain? Is that what it is?
So, did I write what you just said? Because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, you did. You wrote that. Yeah, that's you're not the first person to say that, because I find things in people's books, and I've had authors on the show before go, did I really write that? That's
Yeah. Well, I wrote the book in 2014, so it's been 8 years, and I actually wrote it the first time 7 years before that, before I had the chutzpah to actually, really put it in print.
It's page 26. So just to let you know, I have the page numbers here.
Let me take notes on my own book. That's great.
Yeah, I just thought that was so brilliant, because it is very difficult to go against the grain and choose your own course. And people do have a tendency to think you're weird. People have a tendency to think you're odd. People will not necessarily, they will make fun of you. They will challenge you. But taking a chance to go outside of your comfort zone is really, really challenging. But that is the magical part of it, is getting outside of it. I mean, you as a franchise guy know this more than anybody else.
Yeah.
That when you see people do that, right?
And I totally, I mean, this is the impetus. And by the way, you're such a good interviewer because you do read the books. And so, that's what makes it such a great show. And I appreciate you doing that. It's just really good. So, think back about my own experience with this is, I followed the path that my parents told me is the best path. And my mom always says, and even to this day, she lives down here in Florida now with me, and she's 80 years old, and she's great. She's in great shape, but she's always saying, so when you're going to get a real job, and not realizing that I'm changing people's lives around the country and I make really good money. But I became a subway conductor. And when I got that letter in the mail saying that I should report to duty on Monday, blah, blah, blah. This is, back in 1987. You would think that Jesus came to our house and specifically called me to be a conductor, because my mom was jumping up and down. She was so excited. I got this great civil service job. And I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the people I met on the train, just, from all over the world. And it was fascinating. And that's probably a book in itself. But the point I'm trying to make is that I'm a subway conductor. I'm working. I remember one specific night. It was Sunday, and I worked on a specific line called the R, um, as in Robert line or Romeo, and so that was one train that made all local stops from Brooklyn through Manhattan and out into Queens, and it was a, just a local, made all the stops. But the kicker was this is one line that never came out of the ground. It didn't go up on the elevated. It didn't come out on and go over a bridge. It was underground and went through an underground tunnel to get through the rivers that separate Brooklyn, Manhattan, Manhattan, Queens. And so I hated it. I hated the R line. And you would get out of that, at the end of the day, you would go home, you would blow your nose, and black soot would come out. And they called it steel dust. It's from the brakes rubbing against the wheels when the train stopped. It was not fun. And an old timer said to me, "Hey, kid, this is a great job. Don't be so sad, because you'll always have a shirt on your back." He said, "It'll never be a silk shirt, but at least you'll have a shirt." And I was like, wow, man, that's like mediocrity,
Right,
And I'm
right.
looking around and my bosses were not wearing that silk shirt, but business owners were. But who was I to be a business owner? My parents said I shouldn't do anything like that.
Right,
Just get a good city job with a pension. That's what you need.
right,
And so I did that job. But in that moment, I realized I want to be a business owner and I didn't know how. So I read books. I kept on reading books and, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all the stuff that probably
right.
a lot of people have read that are listening to this show. Um, and I realized after going to some seminars even that a franchise is a business with training wheels. And that's what I needed. That was going to be my foray into franchising. And I ended up hooking up with a coach and she matched me to a smoothie franchise back in 2000. My wife and I together decided, let's give this a shot. And we did. And it turned out great. But people, first of all, my father said, "Are you a jerk? I mean, literally, are you a jerk? Who's going to buy frozen drinks in New York in the winter?" Because it was smoothies, right? And it
Right.
was a new thing. It was really a California thing in 2000. And the funny thing is, as you look back now, we sold more smoothies in the winter than we did in the summer. But you wouldn't know that because you're not in the business.
Right.
And what we found out was that in the winter, we were in the Jacob Javits Convention Center, so it was trade shows. If you've ever been to a trade show or walking around, even like the home show or whatever, you get thirsty. It's
Right.
dry, the heat's on, and so your options are what? Water, coffee, soda. That's it.
Right.
Back then especially. And then you would turn the corner and you would see my booth, fresh fruit, Jamaican music playing. It was like being on vacation. And so people would, buy a smoothie and we sold a lot. In the summer, I was selling smoothies and we did okay, but the competition was everywhere. The lemonade guy, the ice cream guy, I mean, and so we sold more in the winter. And so my long-winded point about that is that you can't let people make judgments for you because they don't know what they're talking about. My
Right.
dad had no idea. I mean, he had a point. If you think about it, most people would say, "You know what? You're right. Nobody's going to buy this in the winter. Forget it. Let me just stick with my job that I don't like."
Yeah.
And
And that's something. It's just crazy how we can that when we do decide to make that left turn away from everybody else, including our family, can be a rough. Can
yeah,
be
but Jay, I had literally had friends say to me and my wife, "I don't know who you are anymore.
Mm,
I can't talk to you."
mm,
And what that says a lot about them. It has nothing about us. We're taking a chance. We're doing something different. Big deal. But they have us in their head in this box. This is who we are. And
right.
now we're changing. That means they have to do work mentally. Now I got to redefine who Tom is. Tom is not the subway conductor anymore. Now
Right.
he's the business owner.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
No, it's powerful because I came from a town of 119 people in Nebraska and was a farmhand. And I remember one of my mentors who passed away year or so ago. Um, Bob said to me, he said, Bob Liedel, who I worked for when I was a kid, and until I went to college. He said to me, "You got out. You're different." And he said, "There's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to say to you, you're not the same." And he said, "You shouldn't be, because you got out."
Yeah.
And he said, you freed yourself." And he said, "I'm so proud of you." That was some of the most powerful words I've ever heard from somebody that I worked for, as a kid. For him to give me that kind of encouragement, later in life, was just huge words. And so it is. I mean, people don't understand, because they always think of you as the hometown boy or doing whatever you're doing, right? Whether, you're working in the subway or you're working on the farm. That's kind of how they see you. It's hard for them to understand the change of that.
And also, what my mentor said to me, a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Diekman, who has written several books on communication. He's the Dean of Humanities in St. John's University in New York. I worked with him for 4 years doing kind of motivational speaking, believe it or not, within transit. And it was really an interesting time for me. But he said to me, as you go on in your life and do something grand, you remind other people of the fact that they don't have the chutzpah to do it,
Mm,
and they hate you for it.
mm,
And so you have to remember that it's about them. When somebody comes up to you and they have some ill thing to say to you, I don't know I don't know who you are anymore, or whatever it might be. It could be a
right,
lot
right,
more
right,
than
right,
that. It's really about them. It's
right.
not about you.
Yeah, and my wife has a great acronym, and I forgot to bring one up, but I will now hold a Q-tip up. And Q-tip, and folks, if you're out there, if you get a Q-tip, hold it up in your hand, and just here's your acronym: quit taking it personally.
I'm writing it down, dude.
I would love to take credit for it, but my wife gave me that, and I use it all the time, so I've stolen it from her. But yeah, Q-tip: quit taking it personally, because people are going to challenge you. By the way, the book is entitled "The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty: How to Manage Change, Embrace Fear, and Live a Fulfilled Life." You are listening to Tom Scarda right here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, I got a couple of great sponsors. One is Epic Physical Therapy. Listen, they're outstanding. They're my physical therapist, but they're not just my physical therapist. There are so many people's physical therapists, including professional athletes. Yes, I have been in there when professional athletes from a variety of different sports have been in there. And do you want to know why professional athletes go to Epic Physical Therapy? It's because they get a customized treatment program that is specifically designed for them. They know they're not going to just treat the symptoms. They're going to treat your body as a functional whole. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, and you know what? Your epic results, you're going to go to Epic Physical Therapy. That's epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors, for more than 35 years, they've stayed on top of the real estate game, helping people all over the world with their residential real estate needs. Listen, there is a reason why their clients call them the legends of customer service. You should find out why, because they're that good. Listen, when you're ready to sell your home, buy your home, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Tom Scarda, the author of this outstanding book that was a gem that found, called The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. It may be a few years old, but I got to tell you something. It's still relevant right now today. It is how to manage change, embrace fear, and live a fulfilled life. And I totally agree with it. We're still in chapter 2. One of the things you say is thought, attitude, and faith are keys to everything in life, is what you say.
Absolutely.
And
I think it's more faith than anything.
You think, I have friends, Tom, who will say to me, "Jay, hope is not a strategy," right? Right. They will say hope is not a strategy. And I agree. It's not a strategy. And you're going to agree too, because your next statement is going to say that in this book. But you know what? You do have to have a level of faith. You do have to believe that good things are going to happen to you, which means that you have to change your attitude. Right. And it means that you have to change your thought life, right? Because you have to do those things if you really believe that good things are going to happen. But here's where you separate this out. You say, in just a couple sentences later, you say, some preach that thought alone can get you whatever you want. However, thought without action is useless.
Mhm.
Action is moving the ideas into reality.
That's it. I love that, man. Did I write that?
Yeah, you wrote that too. You, yeah, you wrote that too, man. You wrote that too. I mean, can I just say this, Tom? I am so happy that I can inspire you with your own book.
I need to reread that book, man. Um,
Yeah,
you know, and one thing I just wanted to say about all that and faith and everything is that I think that I'll say it here and kind of admit it now. I was a drug addict. I was addicted. I was addicted to hopium. I was hoping that my life would change without doing anything about it.
Mm.
And so, don't get hooked on hopium because it'll kill your life. It'll kill your dreams. You come up short if you just think that things are going to change. Like, and we could talk, for hours about this kind of stuff, but
Right.
a lot of people wish and hope they're going to win Powerball or the local lottery.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't give it a shot, but don't hope about it. But if you really are serious about it, you need to be grateful that you've already won the lottery. That'll increase your chances greatly. And also concentrate on it every day. What you have to act as if you won the lottery. What would feel different? And that's the big change. So if you do want to just do thought stuff, you have to start there. You have to change your vibration. You have to be rich and wealthy in your mind before you're rich and wealthy in your wallet.
Yeah, I think though, like one of the things that you talk about here, and I think this is what's important. By the way, I love hopium. I think that's great because I think we do get to be addicted to hopium, right?
Yeah.
And I
I'm
think,
a victim.
yeah, I think we take opiates, right? We kind of just, fall into this trap of taking these things. But I think one of the things that people misunderstand is that, and you make this point really, really clear. I wanted to have a show that was going to disrupt the podcast industry in the success and leadership culture and interview, authors, best-selling authors from all over the world on the books that change a world. And that's been the goal of the show from day one. And you have to take action. I really did take action in everything. I've learned everything I can about radio, broadcasting and podcasting, and I continue to learn as much as I can. I've learned as much as I can from interviewing. I still study films on Larry King and Johnny Carson, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
You have to take those actions. It can't just be, oh, I want to be this or I want to be that. You've got to do it. And what you talk about later on in this chapter, in the subtitles called Choice, is that submersion is the key. And you talk about that if you want to be a doctor, when you go to medical school, and you said this, you said, if you go to medical school, you're going to be submerged in everything, all medicine. If you're going to be a professional athlete, you're going to submerge yourself in everything that's about that sport, and you're going to live it 24/7. If you want to be something, you've got to submerge yourself into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said.
Yeah. And also in that same kind of area in the book, I talk about the fact that the difference between being and doing. If you
Be, do, and have. Yeah, Neil Donald. Yeah, you talk about that.
Yeah, Neil Donald Walsh says, there's a difference, be, do, have. And so people always ask, what do you want to be? And it's not about what you're being, but it's what you're, or what do you want? They ask, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. They ask you, what do you do for a living? It's not what you do, it's what you're being as you're living. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah, Neil Donald in his book, you quote his book, Conversations with God. He said, we must act like the thing you want to be and do the things it takes to be that. And then you will have what your heart desires.
There you go. Very well said.
That's beautiful. I got to tell you something. That's beautiful. And I wish I would have written it, but sadly I didn't.
Yeah, it's eloquent.
It really is. Here's the other thing, folks, about this book, The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. At the end of this chapters, what Tom has done is he's got an exercise for you to do, and it's called the Fuel to change. And he literally has places in this book that you can write down a time, like I'll just tell you at the end of chapter 2, write down a time when you did something and then ask yourself, why the world did I do that? Now write down other choices that could have made and possible outcomes those choices could have brought. Write down some things that you're afraid of. Be honest with yourself. He's got these exercises and he goes through to help you really become aware of where your shortcomings are, but not only be aware of them, but also how to get through them. And he moves you through that as he moves through the chapters. And so I really, really encourage you about this book because it's more than just him talking about the change. He actually helps you get there. Let's move to chapter 3, and it's called a history lesson. And we've already talked about this, but we've talked about this in part. 2 key inputs that we learn fear from. One is the environment. And we've talked about, the influence of people as one, but the environment is the other. And it's our sensory information. And the only way I could best sum this up, I guess, is like, like if you've eaten a bad oyster, you may not eat oysters again, right? Right. That's the only thing I can think of. Is that pretty close?
Yeah. Yeah. That it's your environment kind of teaching you along the way. But if you think about somebody, the examples, like a young child puts their hand on a stove, it's hot. He and she will never put their hand on a stove again, right? So you learn, but if you keep exacerbating that, and now if you decide in that moment, I'm not going to touch anything that's white. So my
Right.
stove was white. I'm not going to touch the white refrigerator. I'm not going to touch the white car. I'm not going to, and then it becomes a phobia, and then it becomes detrimental to your life. So you have to kind of be careful of that. And
Well,
then
but Ray, I think there's other things that happen though, right? Like that changes. Like for instance, let's say I'll give you a prime example because I had to go through this, and I think this created fear in my head, and I had to get through it. When I was 14 years old, 13, 14 years old, we were on a trip back to see family in New Jersey, and we were traveling along, and we were in Florida. We went to Disney World, and we were coming out, and we were heading up to New Jersey. And we checked into the hotel and the motel, I should say. And we went out to dinner and we came home and everything was stolen in our room. Right. And I mean, I had this box of things that I brought, when you're 13, 14-year-old boy, you got your baseball glove, your baseball cards, your GI Joes, right? All your stuff that's really important to you.
Yeah.
And all that got stolen. And I'll never forget how heartbroken I felt because that stuff was the stuff that I had. And it became an irrational fear of distrusting, right? Hotels and motels and not wanting to stay in them and always not wanting to sleep or wanting to go out. I mean, in that one incident, it created a lot of fear.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry about that. That's
No,
great.
right. No, but I mean, right. But it did. What we don't understand, it's those, what you're talking about is it's those moments that we don't even realize that's why that I know, I mean, of course now I've dealt with that, but I mean, it's those moments where you start to hold on to all your stuff, right? Because I don't want to lose my stuff.
Right. And that's the issue is as we're growing up and learning life lessons, it really affects you. And you don't know it, 20 years later,
Right.
30, 40, 50 years later. So I'll share something really quick that's actually not in the book, but I don't know if you know EMDR therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So this is it's kind of brainwave therapy. You get
Yeah.
your right and left hemispheres to kind of talk to each other, and what that does is produce or allow you to remember things that you suppressed. It's very prevalent with soldiers, helping them through all the
PTSD. Yeah.
So when my father was really sick, I had this feeling of hopelessness. I couldn't help, right? I couldn't do anything about it. It's out of my control. And you feel really crappy about yourself because you can't do blah, 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 blah. And so I'm talking to the therapist, And the therapist says to me, and I'm going through this therapy, and she says, "Well, when was the first time you ever remembered that?" And I said, November 21st, 1967. And she's like, "Really? What happened?" Well, I was 3 years old and my baby brother was born. My grandparents took me to the hospital. And back then, you weren't allowed in the hospital as a kid. And
Right.
so we're standing in the parking lot. I remember it as clear as day. And look up at the window up there, and there's my mom holding my brother. In that moment, I decided my mom abandoned me.
Mm,
Irrational, but I believed it. So it was
right.
rational to me. And so forever, I've been trying to prove my worthiness to my mom, to other
Sure.
women, to my wife,
Right.
and it's crazy unless we go in and try to figure out what happened so we can undo it. And I highly recommend EMDR therapy. And there's not many people who do it in the States, but if you can find somebody, it's awesome.
Right.
And it's fast. You don't need to be doing it for 10 years. You do it like, 6 sessions and you're done.
Right.
Um, Although I had to do it for like a year and a half because I had a lot of crap. So,
Well, I mean, the thing is, we have to unravel it. That's the thing, is that there's this unraveling process that has to take place, and we're so afraid. Here's the other thing. This is the irony of it, right? The irony of it is we have these fears, but then we're afraid to unravel the fear because we don't want to we're afraid of looking at the fear of where it started in the first place.
right. It's not
Right? I
about
mean, it's so crazily ironic that we're afraid of our original fear.
right. We're afraid of the fear of the fear and be the fear. And we're crazy people. I mean, just
But it's
Homo
really,
sapiens in general.
yeah,
We're
but it's
crazy.
really true. It's so true, right? I mean, that we've got to do that. One of the things that you did, and I think you did a beautiful job in this book, and you give us 26 notable people who succeeded despite all odds. And I really am going to encourage folks to, when they get to this chapter, I really am going to encourage, it's end of chapter 3, towards the end of chapter 3. But these people that you would never expect, that they failed.
Yeah.
And they made Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, R.H. Macy,
Goes on.
Sokiro Honda, Harlan Sanders,
Talk about
rejected
franchise.
rejected 1,009 times and living in his car at the age of 67. By the way,
Yeah.
before Kentucky Fried Chicken, his recipe was accepted.
Winston Churchill. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Right? Winston Churchill. Of course, Jerry Seinfeld. Who knew that Jerry Seinfeld failed? Right? Who knew that? Right? Lucille Ball. Theodore Geisel. You might know him as Dr. Seuss, rejected by 27 publishers. Right?
Mhm.
J.K. Rowling's story is, of course, huge. Elvis Presley was told he was never going to be anything. Babe Ruth. Man, it's just one after another. And these are great. I encourage people that you need to look at these people, because it's got to give you some, not just hope, but it's got to give you inspiration that, you know what, and you say it, and I've heard it said, I don't know who said it, but what would you do? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
Right.
Right? What would you do?
It's so true. And so you got to look at these other people, and I include, for me, I'm a big music fan. And so I include Elvis and then the Beatles. The
Yeah.
Beatles told that we're not looking for a guitar band. and
Yeah. We're not looking for a guitar band, you guys.
I mean, like, if you think about the world without Elvis or the Beatles, and there's a
Right.
great movie about the world without the Beatles. Like, it's just amazing. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but think about the world without those two, or five people, we'll call it.
Right.
It's just really, it's astounding. And there's so many people that go to sleep every night, with a song in their heart that they are afraid to sing.
Right.
And it's there's a great story. Oh man, going all the way back now, but there's a lady who goes and visits her mother-in-law in a nursing home, and she's in her 90s and she's got dementia or whatever, and she hardly even knows who her family is.
Hmm.
And the nurse takes her aside and says, "Wow, your mother-in-law is really something else. She's got such a voice." Like, what are you talking about? She's never sung a lick in her life.
Right.
And they're like, every night at about 2 a.m., she wakes up and sings the most beautiful opera that you ever heard. And she's like, "What?" And so the lady was a great singer, but when she was a little girl, she was told, girls don't go to music school. You don't become a musician. You get married, you find a good man, you raise a family. And
Right.
that's what she did. But she had this song in her,
Right.
and she needed to sing it. And so, like, I never forget that story. I was like, oh my God.
Well, the moral of that is so cool, right? Because we all have something inside of us,
Yeah.
right? There is something inside. There's something inside of each person that's listening to the show, whether you're listening to us live or whether you're listening to us in your car or at home or Alexa or wherever you're listening to us. The truth of the matter is, you have something inside you. I don't know. I can tell you right now that Tom and I don't know what that is, but you have been gifted with something. Don't neglect your gifts,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's the thing. Don't neglect them because they're there, and don't, and please don't, if just because somebody says, "Oh, that's silly," don't let that stop you, because Tom will talk to you about that as well. And by the way, the other thing that Tom will talk about, and we're going to talk about it right after the break, though, is most of the time what's getting in your way is your ego. His name's Tom Scarda. The book is entitled The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. We're going to be right back right after this. Hey, folks, my two sponsors, I've got more than that, but the two sponsors I'm going to talk about is Epic Physical Therapy. Listen, they have the most cutting edge treatments available. They are certified in the most cutting edge therapies available. They are fantastic. They are awesome. It's people, it's everyday people like you and me, and it's professional athletes. They all come there, and there's a reason why they do. And they come sometimes from all over the world. The reason why they go to Epic Physical Therapy, they're that good. So when you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, you start with Epic Physical Therapy. That's epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors for more than 35 years at the top of the real estate game. How does she do it? Well, she understands that, you know what? It's more than just about selling and buying homes. It's about the people. Ultimately, your home is filled with memories, right? And she understands that those memories are precious. It's not the walls, it's not the studs in the walls. It's the memories. And it's the most significant investment that you have. And she wants to take care of it the way you want it to be taken care of. So when you're ready to start your home selling or home buying journey, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Tom Scarda, the book, The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty, How to Manage Change, Embrace Fear, and Live a Fulfilled Life. I want to thank all the people out there like Mala and Sahar listening on Castbox FM, and as well as so many others out there on Castbox, and as well as all of you out there on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, watching us. Thank you so much for doing that. And for certainly all you folks who download the show. And all my radio stations across the country, I want to thank you for listening to our show every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific across this country. We are so grateful. AM, FM 24/7. So one of the things that you say after we talked about this, and I was kind of my teaser, was most of the time, and you said this, most of the time what gets in our way is our ego, isn't it?
Yeah, and I am the number one. The reason I know that is because that's me.
Would you like to have a session now,
Yeah,
Tom?
on my couch, and yeah, I mean it's and it's weird. Like the first time I ever heard the phrase, fear of success, I was like, that doesn't make sense. But no, it does make a lot of sense. And that I'm not talking about ego in that. Like, what are they going to say, if I do this? What are they going to say if I fail? What are they going to, so it's going to hurt my ego.
Right.
And then there's so many other things that kind of ruin us in our life. I mean, Ryan Holiday wrote the book, The Battle with the Ego. That's not the name of the book, but oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. But
You say, though, we've become a culture that is hooked on more.
Right.
And the more you have, the more you're jailed by your stuff.
Yes, that's right.
And
You can't have
we tie our ego to our stuff,
that's it,
right?
right? And it becomes, how can I drive that? What are people going to think of me if I drive that car?
Right,
Or I need to have that car so people think more of me
right,
because deep down inside I don't really love myself and I'm really not enough. And
right,
so I need to prove I'm enough by buying a car that I really can't afford.
right, right. I thought you said, I'm going to move on here to chapter 5, and it's called Adding Some Glue. You said something about dieting that I thought was just really, really awesome because it's so true. And I'm going to read what you said. You said the reason that diets fail is that most diets focus on the conscious mind. The diet program tells them that they can do it, but their subconscious mind won't let it happen. And I thought about that for a second. I wanted to tell you, Tom, you're wrong. But then the more I kept thinking about it, I was like going, you know what? It's really true. The reason why, and this, by the way, it doesn't have to be dining, it could be whatever. But you know what? We're so focused on changing what you do in our frontal lobe, we're not dealing with the past issues of why dieting might be a problem. And therefore we fail.
Yep, that's exactly right. And the thing I like is something that I kind of stole from the 12-step program, which is HALT, HALT.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You may know it, but
Go
when
ahead.
you're reaching for whatever it is that addiction is, and it's a multitude of things it could be, but on a diet, when you're about to open the refrigerator, you got to stop in the moment and look in between that two moments of standing in front of the refrigerator and opening it. What are you feeling? H, are you really hungry? Or is it A, you're just having anxiety? Or is it L, you're lonely?
Mm,
Or is it just T, you're just plain old tired and you're just reaching for it?
mm,
So if you could stop and think, halt, what am I really feeling? Is it one of these four? You might be able to stop yourself. And I say, get a glass of water and chew a piece of sugarless gum and get rid of that physical urge of wanting to eat something.
You go on in this chapter to say something else that I think is really entirely important. And you say, and I quote, this is from page 60. I suggest the media is a big negative influence in our personal development. I recommend going on a media diet. Cancel your subscription to the news. Turn off the TV. See how your outlook on life changes.
Yep. We're so worried about what we put in our stomach, but we're never worried about what we put in our head.
Mm.
And when you sit there and read the newspaper in the morning, we're told read current events, in grade school, be up on current events. And at the end of the day, you can't control anything that's happening anywhere else outside of you at all. You can't do anything about it. But you're sitting there and you're meditating on it. How do you have a great day if you're meditating on all this negative stuff? Because if it bleeds, it leads, and that's what
Mm.
they say in the old newspaper days. And it never has changed. It's exactly the same. And so the media will kill you. So go on a media diet. That's the best thing you could do for yourself.
And you go on further to say something I think is really powerful. Most people I know start out every day with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. They don't realize it, but they are meditating and praying for bad news to start their day. Wow, that's powerful.
That's it.
That's so powerful. And I wrote a note to myself here. It says everyone does a devotional of some sort when they start out the morning. So what is your devotional going to be when you start your day?
That's it.
Yeah, it's so good. That is so good.
Well,
I
thank you,
really,
Jay.
really, I think that's so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
I just want to share one other thing. I know that we're coming up on time here.
Yeah.
So just the reason I wrote the book, I just want to share this with folks. So I wrote this book. So I match people with franchise opportunities, and I find people get down to the 11th hour and they walk away. And I will share with you that it's whether you're choosing, what franchise to buy or what college to go to or what city to move to, your choice is not choice A or choice B. Your choice really always comes down to the choice between unhappiness or uncertainty. Most people choose unhappiness because they're used to it, even though it's painful. I encourage you to choose uncertainty. That's where magic happens, and that's what this book will help you do. I just want to say that part.
I think that's a great place I think it's a great place to end the show. I really do, because that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
I think, I mean, we've been on for almost an hour. I mean, that's beautiful. Folks, his name is Tom Scarda. The book is The Magic of Choosing Uncertainty. I don't think there's a better way we can end it. You know what? How to manage change, embrace fear, live a life. Listen, it's not a long read. It's a short read. It's a very easy read. It comes with exercises to do to help you unravel the fears that you have. I really, really encourage you. You can find Tom at tomscarda.com. Is that correct, Tom?
Yep.
Right.
That's SCARD as in David A. If you're listening.
Yeah, and check him out. Check out the book. Again, by the way, if you're a Kindle Unlimited user, guess what? This book is free.
Free.
Yeah, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can pick up this book for absolutely free for Kindle Unlimited folks. But it really is a book that's going to encourage you. It's going to help you uplift your spirits, and it's going to help you take some action on the things that you always dreamed of doing that you're not doing right now. You know what? That's the show, folks. You know what I say to you every week, and that's this: you are in control of two things at all times in your life, regardless of the circumstances around you. That is your attitude and your effort. Get control of them right now. Right? I know it's not easy. I know it may be difficult, but you can control your attitude. It can be a great day if you choose to make it that way. You can put in a little more effort if you want to just give a little bit more. That's up to you. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest. It's going to be another great show. And can I tell you something? It's going to be another great book. And as I say to you all over the world, and I thank you so much, ciao, everybody.